And now to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Both countries say they have exchanged over 200 captive soldiers each in what officials have described as the biggest prisoner swap of the war so far. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a telegram message that more than 200 Ukrainian soldiers and civilians have been returned from Russian captivity. Neither side had announced an exchange in almost 5 months, prompting Kyiv to accuse Moscow of deliberately blocking deals for political reasons. The announcement came as Russia continued to strike frontline areas of Ukraine, killing 3 people and wounding at least 1. Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed earlier this week to intensify strikes on the country following an unprecedented attack on the Russian city of Belgorod over the weekend. So let's bring in Associate Professor of the head of the Ukraine GAP program at the Norwegian Defence University College in Oslo, Norway, Tom Reseth. Tom, great to have you on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
To you, yes, just beginning. So what should we make of this goodwill between both countries that have been warring for nearly 2 years?
Well, it is the first prisoner exchange or prisoners of war exchange since August, and it's also the largest one so far. So it's at least it proves that there are back channels and that there are some dialogue between the parties in this war, but I wouldn't say that it is a change in any way on what the priorities are in Moscow or in Kyiv. It is still what we can see as a prolonged war that will continue, but it is, as I said, positive that they do some prisoner swaps, as it has been some time since the last one.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. It will be the first prisoner swap in almost 5 months. It's really one of those rare moments in a war that happens. What does it mean for both sides, though?
It means that they can have some of their soldiers back that have been under severe conditions. For the Ukrainian soldiers, for example, many of them, or some of them at least, that are now exchanged have fought early in the war and became prisoners fairly early in Mariupol, for example, that was sieged by Russian forces. So it's good for the families. It's good also for the national opinion to have some of its soldiers and heroes back to their own land.
And right, so do you think with this kind of a prisoner swap situation, it kind of softens things a little bit, and maybe both sides can actually get to the negotiation table and, stop the war before, it's actually 2 years?
I'm afraid that still is a very hard road to go. We have this prisoner swap, and it is proving that back channels are still working, that could be developed into sort of a negotiations on larger issues in the war, but so far I think this back channels only works for tactical prisoner swaps. You had also through Turkey and the UN, the grain agreement that is now cancelled. But you had back channels that worked for such issues. For the war itself, I think that's hard because both parties see the military solution as the primary solution to gain one's own position and to improve one's own position in this war and towards a settlement. So, unfortunately, I think that will dominate the war moving on as well.
And when you look at the bigger picture, the exchanges come in at a time when Russia has carried out its biggest attacks on Ukraine, and for every Ukrainian attack, Russia has vowed retaliation. As we continue to observe the remaining days and months, there does not seem to be any work in the background for negotiations, as I mentioned earlier, and you did say that it's a very long way to go. So what do you think the international community should be doing at this point to ensure that, this is January, this war does not clock 2 years?
It's approaching 2 years indeed, and I think President Putin in Moscow is his goal is to be re-elected in March, very soon, upcoming as well. He don't want to be soft in advance for that election. Let's call it an election. It's rather a selection and re-election of him. But I think they will not be willing in Moscow to give any leeway or any compromises as long as they have, for the time being, the momentum front line. Yes, they are losing in the Black Sea a bit. Yes, they have challenges on Crimea. But I think Moscow will go for the maximist option as long as it thinks that it will win in the long haul, in the long run. While Kyiv is of course trying to free their territories, and the West is supporting Kyiv still, although there are some cracks in this coalition that supports Kyiv. So it's 2024 will be very decisive and very interesting between Moscow and its sort of long haul support of the war and the support in the West for Kyiv. And I think this year will be decisive, and I also think that the West will continue to support Ukraine, even though there are some cracks in the support.
Right, let's talk a little bit about the elections that you mentioned. Even though, Russia is the aggressor in this, Ukraine too has been fighting back, in whichever way it could. But what's the mood like in Russia? How does a country, at war with another country, how do they prepare, and even how do their citizens, line up to go and vote?
Russia is holding elections sort of to prove that they are in this war for a long time, and they're even holding elections in the occupied territories to sort of try to legitimize their presence there. So
I think you should just take a moment. Do you want to take a moment?
It's no real challenge, I think, but it is to demonstrate that they are continuing this war. They are continuing to support the Putin regime, and they seek
I think we just have to leave it there. I'm sorry, I think you need to take a moment so you can just, cough it all out. Apologies for that. Sorry. I thank you for joining us on the program today. Appreciate your contributions.